The transparent transfusion tubes pulsed with a thick, luminescent gold. Commander Kalen Vance did not flinch as the hum of the extraction machinery pitched higher. Beside him, Empress Cilia felt the sudden, terrifying rush of his life force flooding her own ruined veins. He was actually doing it. Why would a man willingly surrender his final breath to his sworn enemy? Stay with me and subscribe to hear the rest of the file. The metallic tang of the palace's failing life support had been all Cilia could taste 3 weeks earlier, right before the human ship answered her desperate distress broadcast. Illyria was a graveyard of silence. From the shattered window of her palace laboratory, Cilia had watched the vanguard descend through the smog. A human vessel, the enemy. Yet they were the only ones who had answered. Her people were unraveling. The null plague and extinction-level pandemic spared no one, reducing Athelian flesh to ash. In the courtyard below, the once radiant crystal lily drooped, its translucent petals graying at the edges, mirroring the slow death of her world. She had expected Commander Vance to arrive with blasters drawn, eager to witness the end of the Athelian ascendancy. Instead, he brought medical crates and quiet, terrifying efficiency. He stood across from her now in the dim laboratory, his posture rigid but lacking malice. He watched his medical officer, Dr. Eris Lynn, peer into a cellular analyzer. "The mutation rate is exponential," Dr. Lynn said, her voice clipped. "Your extremist faction, the Athelian purists, designed a biological weapon they couldn't control. It's rewriting your genetic structure." Cilia lowered her gaze to her own trembling hands. The skin was already flaking, turning translucent. She knew what her predecessors had done. She knew the humans had every right to leave her here to rot. Vance stepped closer to the examination table. His jaw tightened. He didn't gloat. He didn't demand an apology for the millions of humans her ancestors had slaughtered. He just looked at her fading hands. Sometimes the hardest thing to witness isn't cruelty, but undeserved mercy. Subscribe to follow this transmission to its end. Dr. Lynn's monitor flashed with a harsh crimson warning. The doctor tapped the screen, her brow furrowing deep enough that Cilia could read the human expression of dread. "I ran the cellular synthesis," Dr. Lynn muttered, stepping back from the console. She looked at Vance, then at Cilia, her chest rising in a sharp intake of air. "There is a viable counteragent, but it cannot be replicated artificially. The Athelian physiology is destabilizing. To anchor the cure, it requires a catalyst of raw, uncontaminated biological energy." Dr. Lynn swallowed hard. "A human donor, but the extraction would be absolute. It requires a complete transfer." Cilia felt the little air left in her lungs vanish. A complete transfer. Death. No machine could synthesize the sheer volume of organic energy required to reverse the plague. "It would kill the donor," Cilia whispered, her voice rough, barely carrying across the sterile room. She looked at the human commander, expecting the inevitable order to pack up and leave. They had tried. They had their excuse to walk away with clean hands. Instead, Vance looked at the data scrolling across the screen. He looked at the dying crystal lily out in the courtyard. Finally, he reached up and unbuttoned the collar of his uniform. Commander Kalen Vance lay perfectly still as the medical machinery activated, feeling his life force physically drain from his veins into the body of the alien Empress lying beside him. Inside the dimly lit palace laboratory on Illyria, the silence was heavy. Dr. Eris Lynn monitored the glowing transfusion tubes that bridged the gap between Kalen and Empress Cilia. The cellular synthesis was working, but the cost was astronomical. The null plague, a devastating biological weapon originally engineered by the extremist faction known as the Athelian Purists, was finally meeting its match. But as Kalen's rich, resilient human energy flowed outward, his own monitors began to flatline. The life force extraction was an agonizing plunge into the dark. For 6 grueling hours, Kalen held on to a single image, his daughter, Lyra, looking up at the stars from Terra Nova. He imagined a future where she could travel the galaxy without fear. As his vision finally faded to black, his heart monitor let out a long, continuous tone. He slipped into a deep, silent coma. Beside him, Empress Cilia gasped for air. For the first time in months, her skin radiated a brilliant, healthy luminescence. The null plague had been completely purged from her system, but as she sat up, the overwhelming grief of Kalen's memories transferred through their temporary telepathic link hit her like a physical blow. She saw Earth. She saw the Vanguard. She felt Kalen's profound, unconditional love for his daughter. His life force is almost gone, Dr. Lin whispered, her hands shaking over the medical console. He doesn't have much time. No, Celia commanded, her voice ringing with newfound, resonant authority. The cure was not just his blood, it was his empathy, his willingness to sacrifice. Placing her glowing hands firmly on Kalen's chest, the Empress closed her eyes, tapping into the vast telepathic network of her people. She didn't just pull energy, she pushed it. She forced a stabilizing wave of pure, restorative energy back into Kalen's failing heart. It wasn't enough to reverse the damage, but Kalen took a sudden, ragged breath. His eyes fluttered open. He would live, though his body would never fully recover. Over the next few months, Empress Cilia became a beacon for the Obsidian Reach. She traveled to the darkest corners of the Ethelian Ascendancy, using her telepathic link to share the synthesized cure with her dying people. The Ethelian purists were entirely dismantled, their ideology shattered by the very species they had deemed inferior. In the wake of the miracle, the galaxy changed forever. Kalen, frail but smiling, sat beside Empress Cilia to sign the Vance Accords, a historic interstellar treaty that dismantled the Ascendancy's borders, sharing Ethelian technology and human medical knowledge as absolute equals. When Kalen finally passed away peacefully later that year, the entirety of Illyria wept. Representatives from 100 worlds attended his funeral, watching as a massive memorial statue was unveiled in the capital's central plaza. It depicted Kalen reaching out, offering a hand to the stars. Captain Lyra Vance stood in the shadow of the great monument on Illyria. At 30 years old, she wore the uniform of the Concorde, a joint human-Ethelian exploration vessel. The crystal spires of the city gleamed brightly above her, a testament to a civilization reborn. Empress Cilia, her presence as commanding and warm as ever, stepped up beside her. He would be incredibly proud of the commander you've become, Lyra. Lyra looked up at the bronze face of her father. I used to be angry that he didn't come home, she admitted softly, but he didn't leave me. He made the whole galaxy my home. Reaching into her uniform jacket, Lyra pulled out a vibrant, blooming crystal lily of flower that had once wilted and died in the Empress's gardens during the height of the plague. Now, it was a symbol of enduring life. She placed it gently at the base of the memorial statue. Are you ready, Captain? Cilia asked, gesturing toward the landing pad where their ship awaited. The Crimson Expanse has sent a distress broadcast. They need our help. Lyra smiled, her father's legacy burning brightly in her chest. Set the course, Empress. We're on our way.